Welcome to Small Biz Mama, episode 3. This is the third episode in our series on things you can control. And in this episode, we're going to talk about parenting. Now, if you haven't listened to the first 2 episodes, I would at least encourage you to go back and listen to episode 1 where we talk about life. Because I think that it's incredibly important that we feel a sense of control over our lives before we can implement some of these other strategies. So if you have not listened to that episode yet, stop. You can come back to this one later and go listen to that one. Okay, so let's talk about a couple things that you can control as a parent. Now, I know that this is really hard, and you might feel like everything's completely out of control as it comes to being a parent with your kids home and with everything else going on. Here's the thing. Okay, and I'm going to be some of the advice that I give you in here might seem a little bit radical. I'm a big believer in education. I'm a college professor. I was on the board of education in my town for 2 years, and I love all things education. I think that schools have had to rush to get something in place to teach children. And so in their haste, they didn't really think about, what's it going to be like if you've got 2 parents home that are working and then you've got kids that are home, and we have limited devices and we have limited internet bandwidth. They didn't really think about those things. They just said, all right, so we're going to put teachers on Zoom or Google Classroom or whatever we're going to use, and we're going to have them sit and teach in front of children for 7 hours a day. And I know not all schools are doing that, but I know a lot of schools are. And it's putting undue pressure and stress on families because mom and dad are trying to work, and they need to be on the computers, but then the kids need to be on the computers or they need to be on some device. Districts aren't sending devices home. Internet is stretched. So, I'm really encouraging parents, especially the longer this goes. I think initially we thought this was going to be like 2 weeks, and now who knows, right? I would encourage you to reach out to your school districts and explain to them the reality of what is going on. And I'm sure like a lot of them, a lot of your teachers have children and a lot of administrators have children. And I think we all need to stop for a second and say, is this really what we want education to look like? I have a lot of friends who homeschool, and we're actually planning to homeschool Eric. So we're actually working on, I know he's only 2, but we're planning to do Montessori. And so we're actually in a wonderful homeschooling course. It's called Children of the Redwoods. And it's a phenomenal course. In fact, I'll put the links in the show notes for this episode. But really, when you're doing homeschooling, it's only a few hours a day of actually sitting down at a desk. Because a lot of homeschooling is about practical life things. It's about going outside into nature. It's about letting children explore what they're interested in. And so to have kids sit in front of a screen for 7 hours a day, when we have told children how important it is for them to limit their screen time, right? Isn't that what we do? I think that it is a little bit, I think it's a little bit much. I think there's a way that we can use teachers' time much better. And teachers are, oh my God, teachers I know are so stressed right now. I unfortunately think we're going to lose a lot of really good teachers over this, due to burnout. So I would encourage you to try to put a little bit more control over your children's schedules, especially if you think that they're spending too much time in front of the screen. And maybe reach out to your schools to see if there's some sort of alternative. because it's a lot. It's a lot to expect kids. I'm looking at these schedules. They don't have their friends around them. They're looking at a screen, and we want them to sit in front of a screen for 7 hours a day. And it's just not. It's not helpful. It's not healthy. So if you're in a district like that, or even if you're struggling with, with the technology that they want your kids to use, or you think it's too much, ultimately you are the parent in this situation, and this is something that you can control. Don't let the school districts bully you around. And that might not be a popular opinion. I believe that children should learn. I believe children should be allowed to learn at their own pace. But I don't know that having them, sit in these in front of a computer that long, especially little kids, is really good for them. So that's one thing that you can control right now. The second thing that you can control is you can control the emotions and the vibe that you push out into your home. I understand that we're all stressed out. I understand that, many people are in difficult financial positions. But I think we also have to kind of check ourselves every once in a while, which is why I think that the first episode is so important. Um, and think about how we are behaving in front of our children, right? Essentially, what the purpose, right? What is happening here is that we are showing our children how to deal with stressful situations, right? We are showing our children how to react when things go badly. And if we freak out, and if, we lose our cool, then we're teaching our children that this is how you deal with things. Kids are they're very good at noticing what we're doing, right? They're very observant. And so we need to make sure that we're being a good example to them right now. And I get it, it's hard. Last episode we talked about how much this sucks. It does. But this is a really good opportunity for us to teach our kids what it looks like to be resilient, and what it looks like to deal with, with trauma and with grief. Because I think there is a lot of grief here, that we're not really giving ourselves time to acknowledge. And this is a really good learning opportunity for them. So I hope that you'll take the time to kind of think about, what is the vibe in your household right now? Is everybody on eggshells? Is everybody pissed off? Is everybody just not doing great? How can we change that a little bit? How can we put joy into our lives? How can we create an environment that is good for our children to be in, that is good for us to be in? We have done so. One thing, and I'm kind of struggling with this a little bit, but I'm working a lot less than I normally do, especially during tax season. And that's just so that, we all have time together as a family. We go outside a lot, especially as, we were doing this when it was cold, but we're doing it now that's starting to warm up a little bit here in Connecticut. We're spending time, working with Eric, making sure that he's really getting what he needs through this, right? My mother was coming over and helping us a couple days a week. She's not doing that anymore, out of an abundance of caution. And so, it's hard. It's really hard. And, I think if we acknowledge that, but then say, okay, what can we control in this situation? Then I think that makes it a lot easier. So, I think really thinking about the emotions that you are, that you're pushing out, right? The vibe that you're pushing out is super, super helpful. Because I think a lot of times we're not very cognizant of that. And that's one thing that I really like about, so I do mindfulness meditation, and I just do it in short bits, but it is really helpful. And I'll put a link in the show notes to the app that I use, because they're doing like free meditations every day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern time. And so I'll put that in there as well. Um, and then the last thing that you can control, and I love this one. I think this is kind of a really good perspective on this. So I saw a post on Facebook that was kind of circulating around, and it was a kid, 10 years from now, um, asking, asking his parent, you know, we're studying the pandemic in school, and it seemed like it was, such a weird time. And the parent said, yeah, everything was closed and it was awful and it was terrible, and people lost their jobs, and people died, and it was a terrible, terrible time. Well, don't you remember it? And the son says, well, I remember that we were home a lot, and we spent a lot of time together, and we ate dinners together, and it was probably some of the best memories I have of my childhood. You can control what your children remember when this is all over. And I think that that's such a cool kind of thing to think about, right? And we're doing that with Eric. Like we're spending a ton of time with Eric, and we're kind of thinking about, like, how many hours a week do we really want to work? um how do we want our lives to look, right? And I understand that, for some people, when this is over and when we all, go back to work, and I know a lot of you are still working, but when we go back to work, and things reopen and things go back to normal, I want you to think about, do you really want your life to be the way it was before this happened? Um, and if the answer is no, then what are you going to do to make sure that that doesn't happen? This is such an amazing time to learn new things, to develop new habits with your kids. If you weren't used to eating dinner together, eat dinner together. I started baking bread again. I haven't done that in probably, I don't know, 10 years. And Eric and Jeff love it. They think it's awesome, you know. So I'm doing lots of little things that I kind of forgot about. Um, and I mean, it's funny because, like, Eric is just so happy to have, Jeff and I around. He misses his grandmother. Um, but we're calling her all the time, and we're doing video calls, but generally he's a really, really happy kid, and I'm not seeing signs of stress in him. I think, Jeff and I are just trying to take this one day at a time. Um, but he's probably too young, to remember anything from this. Um, but I certainly want to make sure that he feels secure, that he feels safe, um, and that he feels happy, and that's something that has been really important to me through this whole process, is to make sure that, you know, he would have positive memories of this time when he gets older. And so it's saying, I mean, with especially with children, there's not a tremendous amount that you can control, right? Because we're talking about other people, even though they're our kids, right? But there are certain things that we can control. We can control our kids' schedule, right? We can push back a little bit on these school districts that are just over scheduling. We can control the emotions and the vibe that we put out in our house. And we can control what our children remember when this is all over. And so I hope that you will take some time, especially if you've listened to all 3 of these episodes. I hope that you'll take some time to reframe, right? Where you are. Think about where you are, and think about where you want to be when this is all over. Um, I think we're kind of at a critical time for a lot of us. We kind of went through the shock and the grief, right? If you look through the 7 stages of grief, I've gotten through anger, I've gotten through that piece. But if you look at the stages of loss, right? Because that's really what we did, right? Many of us, we've lost our way of life. And now we're kind of starting to come out of it and go, okay, what do we do next? Where do we go now? Because we're going to be here for a while, right? And we can either kind of continue just kind of slogging through, right, and not being intentional about what we're doing, or we can take control of the situation the best that we can with the things that we can control and make a better path, right? So that hopefully when this is all over, we have stronger families, we have stronger businesses, and we're stronger people when this is all done. So we've got a whole bunch of resources at smallbizmama.com, including lots of links that I've talked about in the last 3 episodes, and lots of links, to just help you navigate this while we're dealing with this pandemic. And I think a lot of these tips that I've given in the last 3 episodes are not just good for this, but they're good in general, right? And they will serve you well even after the pandemic is over. So I'd love to know what you think. Go to smallbizmama.com. You can connect with us on social. You can contact us through the page. But I'd love to know what you think about this and how you're faring. And if you're struggling, reach out. You can reach out to us, reach out to a friend, reach out to your family. But you're not alone here. I know sometimes it feels like it, especially with us all social distancing and staying at home. But you're not alone. We have a group of moms. It's called the Small Biz Mama group. You can find it through smallbizmama.com. And we have a great group of moms in there. If you need some support, we'd love to have you in the group. All right. Thank you so much. And I will see you guys soon.
Thank you for listening to Small Biz Mama with Kristen Ingram. If you'd like to learn how to create more margin in your life, please visit us at smallbizmama.com. That's smallbizmama.com.